Being an actor on the surface looks like a pretty easy gig, doesn't it? Schmoozing around parties with beautiful people, getting sent all over the world, and working with talent approaching that of my own does sound like a dream come true, right? Well, one of the things that's often overlooked is the sheer amount of pain, strain, and weight loss or gain that actors go through in order to nail their roles. We've all heard about the process of method acting, haven't we, where people put themselves through figurative hell in order to become their characters, but the actors on this list went above and beyond. And truly, if method is on one side of the scale, then this approaches madness. So let's take a look at the times when things went too far and why. As I'm Jules, this is Whatculture.com, and these are 10 actors who made insane sacrifices for movies and why. Number 10. Nicolas Cage had 4 teeth removed without anesthetic to better empathize with a Vietnam veteran. Birdie. Nicolas Cage is notorious for his, let's just say eccentric preparations, going to great lengths for what many would consider to be throwaway roles. Back in 1984, when gearing up to play Vietnam War vet Al Columbato in Alan Parker's acclaimed drama Birdie, Cage made the drastic decision to not only lose 15 pounds and have his face wrapped in bandages for 5 weeks, but also get 4 of his baby teeth pulled out. And because that's not enough, he also insisted on having the op performed without any anesthetic whatsoever. Because of course he did, but I mean, there is a question as to why. Well, not to ruin the grossness of this moment, Cage was planning to have this operation done anyway, but he decided to do it without anesthetic so he could feel the anguish that those going through the Vietnam War would every single day. He even stated, "I wanted to look like I was hit by a bomb. It gave me a feeling of something I had lost. I felt this was a once-in-a-lifetime part, and it deserved that much." Number 9. Tom Hanks developed pre-diabetes, but won an Oscar. Philadelphia. Tom Hanks was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes back in 2013, but he actually began to show pre-diabetic symptoms over 20 years prior when he began yo-yoing his weight for several movie roles. While preparing to play baseball coach Jimmy Duggan in 1992's A League of Their Own, Hanks packed on 30 pounds of weight, and less than a year later, he then went 26 pounds below his normal weight to resemble the gaunt, AIDS-afflicted lawyer Andrew Beckett in Jonathan Demm's hit drama Philadelphia. Hanks said that it was after this drastic yo-yo in weight that he began to show high blood sugar numbers, effectively making him pre-diabetic and plotting him on a course to be diagnosed later in life, likely unaided by him again dropping 55 pounds for Castaway in 2000. So why do it? Well, to be blunt, Hanks was hungry for an Oscar, so he sacrificed his future health, and you know what? It paid off in that regard. In the very least, Hanks took home the Best Actor Oscar for his performance in Philadelphia, and in a near unprecedented move, won a second Best Actor award the very next year for his sublime performance as Forrest Gump. Off the back of these roles, Hanks enjoyed a hot streak that ran all the way through the 90s, so it's tough to argue with his decision-making, honestly. Number 8. Nicole Kidman broke a rib to match Vivien Leigh's waist size. Moulin Rouge. In order to play Moulin Rouge's cabaret star and courtesan Satine, Nicole Kidman endured intense physical discomfort, and that's if we're putting it lightly. After falling down some stairs on the set of the hit musical and breaking a rib, the actress then re-broke the rib while insisting that her burlesque corset be laced as tight as humanly possible in spite of the existing injury. This was done because of Kidman's desire to get her waist down to a mere 18 inches due to being inspired by Vivien Leigh. By Kidman's own admission, she kept telling the film's costume team, "Tighter, tighter," leading to the rather unfortunate second break. Between this and some torn knee cartilage Kidman suffered during the shoot, she subsequently had to pull out of the lead role in David Fincher's Panic Room 2 weeks into production, as the physical nature of that role continually aggravated her injuries, leading to Jodie Foster taking over the part. Number 7. Billy Bob Thornton put crushed glass in his shoes in order to properly limp. Sling Blade. Billy Bob Thornton gave the performance of his career, well, so far anyway, as Carl Childers, the protagonist of the Oscar-winning drama that he both wrote and directed, Sling Blade. However, there was a certain flair for this role that bordered on the dangerous, as it turns out that Thornton wore crushed glass in his shoes as he performed in the role in order to perfect Carl's memorable limp. The glass instantly changed his gait and also made it much more natural for Thornton to contort his face in the pained way that Carl does throughout the film, meaning that it's not actually really acting as much as it was actual anguish. For his efforts, Thornton won the Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar and received a nomination for Best Actor. Not bad at all. Number 6. Gary Oldman got nicotine poisoning after smoking $20,000 worth of Churchill-worthy cigars in Darkest Hour. While shooting his transformative, eventually Oscar-winning performance as Winston Churchill, Gary Oldman ended up suffering serious nicotine poisoning after smoking $20,000 worth of cigars over the course of the production. This gave him major stomach issues and forced him to see a doctor during a break in the shooting. But the question is why? Hollywood has more than enough means to make artificial cigars, but so committed to the bit was Oldman that he insisted on things being as real as possible. Though the audiences wouldn't have known the difference between a real-life and fake cigar, apparently it was important enough for Oldman, and when you watch the film, you can see that he is truly living the part. Number 5. Johnny Depp lived with Hunter S. Thompson for 4 months to steal his soul, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Now, it's not uncommon for acting talents to research characters inside and out when getting into the minds of their role, nor is it entirely unheard of actors to contact the family members of the person they're portraying to get a deeper understanding of their tics and mannerisms. However, Johnny Depp went even further than that when he was researching Hunter S. Thompson and moved into his bloody basement. After 4 months of living with him, Depp also drove Thompson's car around and borrowed his clothes, which actually made it into the movie themselves. The plan behind this was to steal his soul. That's what I wanted to do, to try and take as much of him as possible and put it into my body. So, was it worth it? Well, depending on who you ask, yes. I mean, me, for instance, big yes. However, 4 months in a basement, it's got to be a hard pass from me, friend. Number 4. Robert De Niro paid $25,000 to have his teeth altered to more convincingly resemble a criminal, Cape Fear. Robert De Niro absolutely loves going above and beyond for his roles, and while everyone will speak at great length on his weight yo-yo during Raging Bull, his most bizarre transformation came from the Cape Fear remake. Before going in front of cameras to play violent criminal Max Caddy, De Niro paid a dentist $5,000 to grind down his teeth and then another $20,000 after shooting to repair the damage. And it didn't stop there either, as De Niro got absolutely ripped in the gym to the extent that his body fat was just 4%. And he received tattoos made of vegetable dye, which took several months to fade. In his mind, he had to become Max Caddy, and when he scored a Best Actor nomination for the role, you have to think that it was almost worth it. Number 3. Tony Todd got stung by bees 23 times and charged $1,000 per sting. Candyman. I'm just going to say it, Candyman is one of the most criminally underrated horror films of all time. A ludicrously atmospheric and biting flick that offers a sublimely creepy performance from Tony Todd as the Candyman himself. Now, given that Candyman's face is frequently adorned with live bees throughout the film, you'd be forgiven for assuming that they were, I don't know, fiberglass creations, or that Todd was wearing some sort of invisible covering over his face, or they were just edited in afterwards. But no, everything you see in the movie, including bees swarming out of his mouth, was done for real. The only filmmaking concession was that Todd was given a dental dam to ensure that none of the bees disappeared down his throat. So why did he do it? Well, for one, because it looked utterly brilliant, but also because he'd managed to negotiate a special fee, $1,000 for every sting he received. This resulted in an astounding $23,000 bonus payout. That is insane. But honestly, that's also quite surprising considering how many times he's pictured with bees on or around his face. And I'm actually shocked that he didn't try and claim a few more because, I mean, who's gonna know and check? I mean, it's what I do. Number 2. Jackie Chan did his own stunts to ensure that he wasn't just another Bruce Lee clone. Though in recent years Jackie Chan has massively toned down the death-defying stunt work and left the tough stuff to the younger men, in his prime from the 1970s through to the 1990s, he was an absolutely untouchable, brazen, daring stunt performer, possibly the best in the world at the time. But his global fame wasn't without a price, as Chan racked up literally countless injuries over the course of his career, breaking many of his bones throughout his body, being burned, permanently damaging his spine, and suffering a head injury so severe on Armor of God 2, he had to have actual brain surgery. To say Chan has suffered for his fame and our entertainment is a massive understatement, and it was all done to distinguish himself as just being more than an imitation of Bruce Lee and other movie martial artists. By venturing off into a more comedic direction with his martial arts shenanigans and focusing on risking his own life and limb above all else, he became an attraction that the world simply couldn't lump in with all the Bruce Lee knockoffs. And when superstardom came, Chan presumably couldn't let a good thing go, and he just kept flirting with death until he came to Hollywood and producers begged him to let the stuntman earn their pay instead. And number 1, Debbie Reynolds danced until her feet bled to prove Gene Kelly wrong, singing in the rain. She claimed that singing in the rain was one of the hardest things she's ever had to do, but that was down to one very specific motivation for putting herself through such punishment. Director and co-star Gene Kelly was an historic asshole to her during the film's production, and she wouldn't allow herself to prove him right. You see, Reynolds wasn't a trained dancer prior to shooting the film, unlike Kelly, who clearly disdained this fact and verbally abused Reynolds to such an extent that he made her cry. But when it came to shooting Good Morning, she threw herself into it as aggressively as anyone has ever done anything, the results of which are clearly both bloody brilliant and just brilliantly bloody. Reflecting on the scenes and her animosity with Kelly many decades later, the late actress said, "I didn't feel you could fail. I felt the part was me, and I marched straight ahead." You know what? Damn straight.